Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I've got a number of slides to go through, but I also want to let you know that this probably will be the more open session for us to have questions and answers, that sort of thing. To start out, a little bit of this information is kind of formed by my time in higher education. I was with Oral Roberts University. I was with Indiana Wesleyan, with Ballard Christian College. I also served as a faculty member to 7 different institutions, primarily, as I said last session, the doctoral and master's level, both online and on-site. But my greatest experience was with graduate online programs. And so and since it's leaving that area and being full-time doing consulting work, I've noticed a number of trends. And so that's what this comes from, is some of those trends. And I wanted to just talk to you about some of the common mistakes, the common hang-ups that I see as I work with different schools. When I think of the areas that struggle the most in these types of programs, it usually starts at the top. Leadership is not supportive, and they're not supportive in a couple different ways. First of all, when I think about the first area and the most innocent area, it's just a lack of experience. We've all been there. We've all had lack of experience at some point in some area of our lives. And unfortunately, sometimes individuals get into the presidency and they just are not prepared, whether it's for the presidency at large or for working with adult and online education, is what we're talking about here. They may have a love for a traditional model, and they've grown up in that, knew how to work that, et cetera. And this new thing, this new startup, comes up on and wants to encroach on what they love and enjoy, and they just don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to think about it, whether they're technology averse or they're just, this accelerated format doesn't, at all appeal to them. And so that's the first group, they're just inexperienced. A second group, that is a traditional, someone who really thinks that there is only one way to do education, and it's only in a semester format, and it only works this way, and it's only done that because Jesus did it that way. Jesus taught, everyone knows, in a semester-based format, and he wore a tweed jacket, and he had arm patches on there, and he did it right before chapel Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right? I mean, that is how Jesus did it, right? But seriously speaking, they think they connected almost with their faith. That's important to them. However, what we find when we look at adult and online education is really that the online outcomes are equal to or better than a traditional model. So you have people coming out of it, online programs, if they're done well. I mean, you can have bad online programs too, I will admit. But if you do them well, they're better at preparing a student for what they're to be about when they're set up correctly. Another area that I see, or another problem that I see in leadership, is they're either passive or passive aggressive, and they may not want to do the program, so they don't. They just kind of listen, or they don't want to do the program and they, quietly try to sabotage it. I've seen that too, where they're doing things that is against the adult program, and it's unfortunate that either situation is the case. I of course, the passive aggressive is the one that really bothers me. When they're trying to get their needle in there, why you're not watching a twist. So those two pieces, those two individual types of individuals, are something that I look for and I find often. Another area is they just have an alternate focus, whether it's a building project or a major catastrophe that has come hit the institution. Their focus is just elsewhere. Sometimes you just can't fault them for that, but it does cause a program to suffer. And typically, this leadership, this group that is affected, is the president, it's the VPAA, maybe a VP of operations or a CFO that is helping to get these things off the ground. Could be a dean, the VP of enrollment. As Sylvia said earlier, that VP of enrollment, if it's just one person for both traditional and online graduate or online adult, if those two people are the same people, there is a focus, difference for either the traditional side or for the adult and online side. So having those general categories of people, not to say this hits all the nails on the head, but these are the major pieces, the major types of people, and the major issues that I see in leadership when there's a lack of leadership and why they struggle with that. Another big part of a common mistake is just not understanding the market. They may want to do it, they may even have a little experience, but they don't spend the time getting to know who their customers. And we talked a little bit about this in the recruiting in particular. Sylvia could have easily covered this same information. She covered some of it before, but you can see some of the characteristics of this market. The adult, these are straight out of people like Knowles and other andragogy-based and adult-based theorists. These are all related to what adults value and adults feel is important. So understanding that is part of it as you're preparing to serve these students is vital. Another aspect to consider is their generational cohort. Now let's see, in this group, we're probably Gen Xers to Boomers, is this particular group. However, the millennials are really our group that we're starting to serve in college and in adult circles. And this group is on its way. It's pretty close to hitting college. My middle daughter is 10th grader, and she was born in 2000. She actually will start college next year in a dual degree program. So that group is getting ready to be served at our colleges. And making sure we understand their characteristics is important, because some of them are going to, this one always gets me, the millennials in particular, as they enter your classroom, they think they know how to work technology and can work around circles around you, and they think that they're probably God's gift to the world in some cases. Now, I'm giving some hyperbole there, but that is really, as an example, I had this group of students. I was a K-12 superintendent of a school, and I was talking to the football players during a chapel, and I said, "Well, guys, what do you think God has for you in life?" And without missing a beat, the kid said, "I'm going pro in the NFL." Of course, they were good football players. I'll give them that, and some of them did go to college and play in college, but they weren't NFL ready yet. But they thought they were. That is this group. They think that they are the best. So, and another aspect, if we could really talk about long and hard, is their postmodernity. From here, 3/4 of the way into the Gen Xers, we really start seeing a heavy postmodern influence. And while I won't take the time to talk about all the implications there, that is a really big part of what we need to consider, is their basis for truth, because they don't always have one, and their truth is very situational. And that is hard to deal with for those of us who go, there is a truth, it's capital T truth, and we believe it's based in the Bible. So that group, though, is definitely in there. The millennials and Gen Z, and some Gen Xers are postmoderns, so you can consider that part of it. Now, a little bit further detail on how I did this to myself. So the millennials are really our focus area, because they're going to be they're the wave right now. If you think of your generational cohorts and the size of the population as a wave, the millennials are the bigger wave getting ready to hit us, and we're seeing them more and more. But you can see that high-tech, neo-optimistic, very globally focused. The programs that we're looking at for these are very focused on helping. So human services, psychology, Those are very popular programs with this cohort. They're less focused on the ultra rich. What am I going to do to make money? It's more, how am I going to make my mark on the world and help the world? That's more of a focus for them. So that's something that you should consider as you're developing programs. They are looking for a way to make an impact. If you're familiar with John Acuff, he's a speaker and author, and he talks about how he did a crowd fund to fund a school. And he was thinking, this would be a great thing to do, and I would love to be able to set up a school in another country to help underprivileged. And maybe if I worked at it for a while, we could eventually get the funds. Well, he put up a crowd fund, and it was not a couple months or a couple of years. It was overnight, and they had funded that school so fast that they decided to do it again. And it's those types of mentalities that the millennials are looking at and going, I want to be part of something important. And we need to find a way to engage them. Their education and the preparation for these students, it should be looking at those things, finding a way to engage them to take advantage of that part of it. We talked a little bit about selling the wrong programs. For a lot of adults, we could be putting in things like the humanities and medieval English or whatever, basket weaving 101. But if it doesn't sell them on their field, if it isn't helping them progress professionally, it's not doing them any good. So they're not going to be seeking out those programs that are pie in the sky unless it's something that is very personal and needed for their own use. We need to design programs that are needed in the field. Healthcare is huge right now. Criminal justice is huge right now. All the programs that are made for adults to be convenient. It's not an ivory tower with these people. They'll resist the ivory tower and walk the other way. If you, however, go out and serve them, really serve them, and part of that is carrying out our Christian faith to be a servant to all, that's what gets them. That's what makes that connection. The hard sell question that we had earlier, I think you asked about hard sale versus being a recruiter, was a great question because it points out it's not the hard sell. It's how are we relating? How are you connecting with me to be able to show me this is good for me? When you're looking for the right programs, it does really affect who you are as an institution. So rather than letting the tail wag the dog, you need to start with who you are as an institution. What is your focus? What's your mission? What's your vision? Where do you feel like God is taking your institution? How does God want to use your institution and the people in that institution? And from that, you then develop your offerings. You develop your programs. Now, are there creative ways to carry out your mission and vision that you may not have thought of? I hope so. I hope that God is using you in this time to develop creative ways that no one else is going to think of. That's partly where I love to sit. That's the table I want to be at, to create new programs. I'm working with my kids' school, developing this dual degree program for them, and I have more fun thinking about ways that we can develop that for them because it lets me think of ways we haven't done it yet and things that they're going to get to do by implementing this new program. Those types of conversations at your institution, I hope you get to have and have fun, as much fun as I do. But maybe I'm a curriculum academic nerd type person that gets into that. Hopefully, though, you enjoy that part of it because to me, it's extremely enjoyable. But making sure that you take a review of your current programs and what the field is looking for, what's popular, that you can put your own stamp, your own influence on it is going to be very important. When you think about your own institutions, what are some of the things that jump out at you as these are foundational to who we are? These are some of the characteristics that would play into determining the right programs. What are some of the things that you go, that's us, and we need to make sure that's central to us when we develop programs? What are some of those things? Sure, absolutely. Christian and Bible.
maybe aging is captured all these things.
Sure. Transformational aspects, yes. What else?
Our college focuses a lot on kind of like that intercession, character, that's so important. Even in the sort of the programs, you get those courses. They equal Bible courses, but it's more specific to those things. Even things like Christian healing and that we really that whole area of the Holy Spirit. I guess in your denominational plan.
Sure, absolutely. Those are vital things to consider.
I'll take a little bit of that from you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that we are in between space between Bible college and biblical university. We really don't want to be a liberal arts university, but we really don't know what biblical university means. We don't know what it means, nobody else knows.
Right.
But it only means the undergrad 30-hour Bible, only good for education, and that's not sellable. So we're in between, and we're seeing the Bible college market running up demographic. So our we're seeing our seminary mission strategies, ICS programs, and so lots of large churches, for example, now are training, putting their own missionaries, how they're going to reputation, all those kinds of things go back to what we were doing with the movement way of doing things.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I think if we keep doing things we're doing, then we're going to see through. But if we change too quickly, not taking into consideration who we are, we tend to alienate ourselves from our alumni.
Yeah.
And so that's the difficult in between space we find ourselves in. And I'm not really quite sure how to navigate all of those problems.
Well, and that's a great discussion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that discussion at the institutional level is extremely important to have. Now, I grew up in a liberal arts environment. However, the more I see of the Bible college and ultimately the Bible university, the more I want that. I want that for my kids. I want that for coming generations, and this is why. Because it is supposed to be that the Bible is the foundation. If I don't let that go, I'm helping support that base level, that base foundation of truth, capital T truth. And I have grown up in my experiences of the construct of what's called the principle approach. If you're familiar with that from homeschool, I see you guys not with Rosalie Slater. The construct will start with the principle in the Bible and teach the topic. There are some that are more difficult. Multivariate analysis is not necessarily a concept talked about in the Bible. However, the concept of just weights and measures is, right? So we can get at certain topics by knowing the principles in the Bible. But as you develop the idea of what it means, what are the characteristics? Is it 30 hours? Okay, maybe that's not enough. I think there's much more than the Bible college is. I think the ability to help the students see how they, like Rob Reiner, that's his name, talked about in Roaring Lambs. How do I affect my field? What is it? Reiner, thank you. I always mess it up. How do I affect my field for God? How do I go out and impact where it seems like I really don't have a chance to impact? And that's, I think, what the Bible college does for me. I'm able to see how we take the Bible into the business place, how we take the Bible into human services and criminal justice, how we be Jesus, where a traditional minister in the pulpit will never get. And I think that's the advantage of the Bible college movement. Teaching them to be ministers wherever God called them. I heard this definition of ministers one time and I've stuck with it. A minister is someone who stands in place of a great one. You think of a minister of education in other countries. So if a minister is standing in the place of the great one, That means that I'm a minister to my office, I'm a minister to my dentist, I'm a minister to my kid's school. Every place I interact, I'm standing in the place of God for them. I'm being God to them. I'm carrying out the word to them. And that aspect is where I think the Bible college has most value. We're training those people.
So, I would say, we would say we educate them.
Right.
Which is what we're about.
Right.
We're all about it. Everyone.
Yeah.
That's great. Our president will be doing that in culture. It's true.
Yeah.
What are you going to say? It's true. Okay. But the challenge is that if you take the graphs that show what we've heard today, what adults want to buy, what we traditionally offer as Bible college isn't what most of them want to buy.
Sure. And you're going to have to structure the degrees, not giving up that Bible, keeping that Bible central. The courses that we designed for EMS, we've got leadership and ministry, business, human services. We have concentrations in youth ministry, women's ministry, church planting, and quality management. All of those could count as one of the interdisciplinary Bible courses, according to ABHE. Every week of class starts with a devotional. Every week of class is developed with a principled approach. That's how we think that we should develop our coursework. And so that when we talk about a stats class or we talk about a business class, all of them have Bible as part of the textbook. They're all built in that way.
Where I was going with that, Russ, is that you take courses, programs of study that we traditionally offer as a Bible college, and now in this transition, university, adding sports management, adding education, we're adding psychology, we're adding the
Mm-hmm.
Never done that.
Sure.
So that's what in the space we want to do that with the Bible foundation. Challenge is these are the new initiatives that we're kind of trying to find out.
Yeah. And you're going to have to learn how to do that, but I think you're on the right path, that you're going, okay, we're going to teach this topic, and we're going to teach the Bible. And they're not separate topics. They're not separate courses. It's one and the same course. That means probably you're going to have to find the right faculty. That means you're going to have to find the right textbook that is not antithetical to the Bible. A business book that rejects the ethics, not that I don't think anyone would do it on its face, but if in practice it leads to rejecting the ethic and the morals discussed and held by the Bible, then that would be very contrary to where you want to go. So that selection process, that development process for your staff and your faculty to know, we are a Bible college. You'll hear Mark Smith talk about this, is that now that they're a university, they haven't lost their Bible college foundation. They haven't changed that out. They're still a Bible college. And they have that same focus of being a Bible college that teaches the Bible in their courses, every one of them. So, yeah. It's not just something that you do without thought, though. I think that's exactly what you're saying, is it's taking a tremendous amount of thinking through it. Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of some of the popular programs, these are some of the more popular programs, and this is off of prweb.com. These are some of the more popular programs out there, and you can look at it and go, well, we have some of those, but you can also start looking at it and go, there are some areas we could add and still retain who we are as a Bible college. I mean, the religions ones are pretty easy. The criminal justice one, maybe a little bit more of a stretch for some, trying to figure out how do we do criminal justice and be a Bible college. Well, to me, there's, again, a great way to be a minister, to train up a minister to send them into that environment. Accounting, you heard Rob today. He's an accountant type guy. I can't imagine being an accountant, mostly because it would seem like that would forever bore me to no end. I can't be that guy. But that doesn't mean that God has not called someone to be an accountant. My accountant who I've used for a number of years, strong Christian, very active in being a solid Christian as an accountant. And she works with ministries all over the country, ministers all over the country, businesses all around the world, and her focus is on helping you do your business well. She's made that a part of who she is and carries out, and she's growing very fast. She told me the other day, she's actually right in Dallas, off of Josie Lane, if you need an accountant, Steve. She has gotten big enough where she couldn't keep up with her company, and she finally found some people to put in the right places to help her get some relief because they've been growing so fast. So these types of fields, as you're looking at it, you have to think creatively, how do I maintain my Bible college environment and yet cover the topics that are needed out in the field? Now, here are some of the highest demand. We talked about the popular majors. Now, this is from the employer perspective. And as I was talking to one of the guys this morning, he's at Asbury. He's a college buddy of mine. We found out we were both going to be here. He was sharing that they're having to start collecting the data for iPads, et cetera, on where they're employing, et cetera. So this is the employer perspective that you need to be considering. Business is the top highest major in demand. Computer science, understandable, engineering, and it goes down the row. These are the types of things that you need to be considering. One is the popular demand, but also what's being hired. Make sure you're considering the programs that make sense. And if you want any of this, I've got these slides individually. And as I said, I'm recording these and we'll put them out there so you can always have that later. I know Rob heard this in detail, but this is another one that I find is a pretty big mistake, a pretty big trouble area. They're either deeply in debt, and that's why they're finally going, okay, let's talk about doing an adult online program. Another poor financial mistake is to not recognize that everyone has to be a salesperson for the institution. Now, if you're like me, sales is not your first thing. I'm not really wired that way as far as, the high pressure, sell ice cubes to Eskimos. This is not me. Mark Smith is very gifted in the area of sales, and you didn't know that. He has, I don't know that he sold ice cubes to Eskimos, but he has been selling since he was a kid. He was telling a story last night about how his grandmother trained him to raise and then sell pigs as a kid, like it's under 10 type of thing. He's been focused on sales since he was that young. So it's built into him. But what he does at his institution is that everyone is part of the sales team. That's faculty, that's administrators, that's students. Everyone is about selling the product they have, education. And why is that? Because they're affecting the world for Christ. And your institution needs to have that same mentality. It's not the hard sale. It's not jam it down their throat. It's about, we're excited about what we have. We're excited about who we are. We're excited about getting this done. Part of that sales process is everyone is posting on Facebook. Everyone is connected on Twitter. Everyone is getting their information out on what's a quote-unquote free media. Everyone is bringing their friends and talking about OCU. That's part of who they are, and they're all focused on being a salesperson. However, what I unfortunately see is that the faculty sometimes are like, well, it's not my job to sell this program. I'm not lifting a finger to help the admissions team out. And if they don't do what's right, I'm not going to help them at all. If they're, it's on them, it's not on me. And what happens? They lose their job because no one would help them. The admissions team was floundering. They had no resources. I'm watching a couple of institutions that are in this case right now that they won't help out at all. They will not make the program sellable as faculty. We talked about the marketing budget. that one is huge, and I hear this one all the time. I walk into a college and we're talking about helping them in their enrollments and recruiting, and I say, so what is your budget for marketing? And one guy actually said, what is this thing that you speak of, marketing? What is that again? And budget? I don't understand. And he was being joking, but he was unfortunately not joking about having no budget. And when I asked a little bit more detail, he said, well, we got in a tight spot and we had to cut it. And now they don't have students, and that's why. Because they did not set aside that money to market. As Mark noted this morning, he had to chop a huge amount of money so that he could go market, and that turned into his students because he invested the money in the marketing to get the students to come. And failure to protect the adult and online budget. In the pro forma that I have, I actually finally set up a specific line item where I could go, okay, the traditional college can have this percentage of the money that we bring in, this percentage of the excess revenue. Other than that, leave it alone, because everyone wants a piece of the money when there's extra money. Everyone will find a way to spend your money. And not that I begrudge them having resources. I don't begrudge them. But if they steal all your money to the point that you lose the marketing budget, you're hosed, because then you're back to where you were before, and that's cannibalized. So you have to make sure you protect the budget so they can operate. Another area that I found is a common mistake area is that of the faculty. Everything from the hiring process to the ongoing training, they're not doing this well. For the hiring process, you want to have some sort of a balance. You don't want to have so much that it's impossible to get a person hired. I've worked with those groups too. For one institution, I submitted 200 faculty members as potential adjuncts. They were just clamoring, oh, we need these faculty, we need them. I submitted 200 to them. One got through their process because it was so arduous. And it wasn't like these were not good people. I mean, they were PhDs, academic teaching experience, knew what they were doing. One person got through. And that's obviously the nth degree. We don't want that side of it. But the other side of it is we want to have some standard. We don't, as Dave Ramsey says, the best way to keep crazy out of the building is to not hire them. If you hire crazy, they're getting in the building. So make sure you have some process to make sure you have quality. My wife and I own a company, and we have walked through the process of developing it. We've had several steps to make sure that we don't hire. And some have been because we learned from people like Dave Ramsey, and some of them have been we figured out the hard way. We are right now on the verge of letting someone go that just hasn't worked out. We have, I think there's 10 or 15 steps. They're not, unreasonable, hard ones to get through. In fact, they're usually accomplished pretty easily, but they're check marks. Okay, where are we at? And it's everyone. We have a small team of 15. Everyone on the team kind of gets to review the person. We get to see them in the lab. It's a local testing company, so they go in the lab and do stuff. And then they get a chance to interact with even the receptionist. Does the receptionist have a weird feeling about it? Moves on up, finally gets to my wife. She has an interview with them. If they're good, then she and I go out to dinner with them and their significant other. We found out after the fact on this one lady, we had already let her go. There was just something not quite right. She was within her 90 days, from starting, and so that's the time period we go. We're having a problem now. We're just, we're gonna wait goodbye and move on. And we found out this lady just got married to another lady. Now that's not a thing that we say you can't be, but it's certainly not our beliefs. And we would have really struggled with that one had she stayed around. But because we had a process in place of we're watching this until it's too late, and we're committed to it, and we're paying attention, We got rid of that one before it became a real issue for us to have to deal with. And making sure you have a good hiring process that you walk through and as much as possible, keep crazy out of the building. That's what you need to be thinking about. In the faculty area, I like the use of adjuncts for a lot of different reasons. They're really easy to budget. In our model, you pay them $1,500 or $1,000, or you base it on a structure and a number of students, and it calculates really nicely. In the pro forma, it's a nice calculation, easy to do. The other thing that it does is it reduces your benefit cost. I personally pay on a 1099 when I'm working as often as I can. That keeps some of the costs that you have to pay as an employer down. Now, there's a lot of people, and Rob would tell you, he's more on the other side, he's a W-2. I've been surveying this one quite a bit lately, working with my accountant. The adjuncts fit very nicely into the consultant mode as a 1099 person. So that's another reason it saves the benefits. The other thing is that they're really easy to get rid of if they're not good. You still have the process, but for every time that you get one right and you say we're committed to you for a full-time person, you can get it wrong just as easily because they hide things real well. Crazy people have a way of hiding things sometimes. So with an adjunct, we're not married. If I don't like you or there's something not right with you, I just don't schedule you again, and I don't have to say a word about it. And that sounds a little bit heartless. I'd rather be heartless than put my students through the really terror of a bad adjunct. Another area that is really important to consider is your traditional versus your online adult faculty. They're often two different animals. Putting a traditional person into an adult and online can be detrimental. I was hiring for a full-time nurse in Cleveland, and a lady got to my desk that had excellent credentials. She had a PhD or a doctorate in nursing, years of teaching experience, all these great credentials that I was like, wow. I mean, I don't even feel worthy to interview. Maybe you should check me out, make sure I'm okay to have my position and looking at her credentials. But she got in there, we started talking, and it was immediately evident that she wasn't going to work out. She was already inflexible, and our product was wrong. We were doing things wrong, and she was going to have to make some changes, but she'd probably be able to work it out. That was the attitude that she came with. I would rather have a person that is field-based and working out in the field their whole career with very little teaching experience come in and teach my students than someone with years of academic work on the traditional side that is unbending, unwilling to learn, and do a bad job of it, and push my learners away. I would rather have that adult online friendly faculty member that I have to train from ground up, that may not have some of the skills of leading discussion, that may not have some of the teaching, quote unquote, skills. And I did hire a lady that had less academic experience because she was willing to learn the process. It's really important once you've hired the right people to have a good orientation process. So often, I've been into orientations, and like I said, I've been teaching I've taught at 7 different institutions. However, I've been hired by a number of other ones, and it was only after I went through their orientation process that I said, I'm out. No, this isn't going to be a good match, because I disagreed. One institution required the faculty member to respond to every comment that a student made online. Now, practically speaking, if you have a class of 20, if they're active, you will never catch up. They're in the discussion forum, and this was a heavy discussion. They really stressed that part of it. If you're trying to keep up with every jot and tittle that student puts out there, you're going to be dead after that class. That was, for just one class. But philosophically, I disagreed with it because I don't believe I should be the center of the class. And so making sure that your orientation and your mentoring process is properly training them and getting them a picture of who you are. Not only does that help them understand what you expect, but it lets them self-select out. So that's a really important one. And so your orientation is where you'd start, and then your mentoring is ongoing. Who was talking about it earlier today about the mentoring? Oh, it was Sylvia and how she mentors her recruiters. With putting them with an experienced person, I've had that in several situations. It's been such a help. In fact, there was one time where I had a crazy student, and my mentor was right there watching the whole thing and saved me hours and hours and hours with the HR team or whoever it was. Control of content is another big thing. In the traditional model, you don't normally have a module with all the information built in where the faculty member just walks in and teaches. Usually they're developing their own material, they're selecting their own books, they have course objectives and course description and full go. However, in the adult model, more often than not, they don't have that set up. They have set up where we have a course model, you're supposed to really kind of follow these guidelines. It has the assignments, it has the lecture material, the topics you're supposed to cover. All those things are built in. And all the textbooks, they walk in, they could read through the material, then get a general idea and go, rather than spending time developing. It's a very systems approach to education. But what is a big problem in some adult programs is, despite the institution paying for this material, it's a work-for-hire product recognized by case law that says when you pay for a product, you own it. So they had a course writer develop it, they paid them for that, now they legally own that material. In this situation, sometimes the institution will not uphold their rights. They will not say, I own this, you don't own it anymore, I get to do with it what I want. If we want to change it, we can change it. You don't have that say anymore. Instead, they let the faculty whip them around with it. And that's probably a bigger one than anything on this list. This one right here is that faculty control over this issue is too harsh, too heavy-handed. Where a traditional program tends to be more faculty-owned, this is owned by the institution in the adult and online programs. So if you don't own this, you can't be as nimble. When the market changes and you need to make the change quickly with them, if you don't own the content, the day's over. You have to wait until the faculty goes, okay, you're allowed to change it now. Well, that's not how it works well. Evaluation and monitoring is another big one that is not done well. I had in Cleveland the practice of just walking into classes some night. I wouldn't announce. There were times that I did announce, hey, I'm coming by, just wanted to, let you know. There were other times I just walked in and sat in the back of the classroom. In some cases, I was checking up on some faculty concerns that we heard. One night, I did that, walked in unannounced, and sat down in the back of the class, and the faculty member proved to me that it was time for him to go. And instead of delivering the class like he should have, he turned the class on me and said, what concerns, comments, questions, complaints do you have? The dean is here. That was his last class. So having a system of checking up on faculty, because you also want to catch the bad stuff, but you also want to catch the very good things, right? We want our faculty to be successful, because when they're successful, our students are fed, they're developed, they're made ready for the program, and that endears them to us. When we know they're doing a good job, we're happy. When we know that they're caring well for our students, that makes our program successful. So we want to catch them in good things too. And so we want to have a monitoring system. We want to have an evaluation system. Some of that is the end of course surveys that we all are familiar with. But there's also things where we go in and we have a checklist. We have a rubric that we're using. Ongoing training is another big thing. Sir.
So is this something that's separate in your best practice? Or do you use faculty evaluations through the formal flow?
This would be a separate system for just the adult program, both adult and online programs. There might be very similar systems, But if you put a traditional faculty member observing an adjunct faculty or an adult online faculty, they're not looking at the same things. So it's a separate structure to handle it. It may still feed into the institutional assessment process. It should, but it's done by people who understand that side of the house.
So you can't drop into a class on an online class.
Yes, you can.
How?
You go in and look at what they're posting. It's really to do in there. Because you can look all through what they posted, how they've responded, whether or not they've responded. In fact, depending on your LMS and your student information system, what reports are available, you can see how much time they spent online, how many posts they've made, how many assignments they've graded on by the due date. There's all sorts of things you can do online that are, I'm an online guy, so I know all the things that I like to see when I'm watching. Yeah, so any of those rubrics that they have to respond by a certain time, make an initial contact with the student in class. For a lot of institutions, they require that the faculty make contact with the student by the third day of class. At University of Phoenix, my practice was I had responded to everyone's post of their bio as soon as I could after they posted it. So you have a normal curve for how soon they post their bio. So you have the early posters who, the moment the class is up and going, they're online, they've posted everything they could possibly post. And then you have those who are, they get to it in the first day or two. And then you have the ones that at the very last second, at 12 or 11:59 on Monday night before the next week starts, they post their stuff. As soon as I could post it, or post response to them, and I try to find something that I can connect with. That's what I would want for my faculty. I'd be looking for, how are you interacting on a personal level, not on an academic level, not giving them feedback, but how are you connecting well with them? Those are the type of things I would look for to make sure that they are making a real world connection. They're having the things like, oh, you have a dog, or you like basketball or golf, or I found something that we related on, and finding those types of things that are going to make the connection. I said ongoing training. There's so many topics that faculty can be trained, whether it's a new type of engaging a student, whether it's learning how to do a video post, or learning how to have your tone better. You could look at APA, APA format. If you're an APA, I'm an APA guy, so we always do APA in our stuff. You can talk about best practices for using rubrics, best practices for grading and providing feedback on paper or a project, all sorts of different training. And they don't have to be 3 weeks long. They can be a little vignette. Okay, today we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to give you some ideas on how you can make your practice, how you can organize your time better for grading multiple class sessions, how to effectively grade assignments. There's so many different things that you can talk about that they need training on. And it doesn't have to be so heavy that they just feel the drudgery of going through training. Mentioned a little bit of the faculty recruiting process. This was I know you can't see it real well in here. This was our faculty recruiting process in Cleveland. It started out with an initial contact. So whether we saw them out in the community or they came in, whether through an email, we responded to email, fax, mail, voice, some of the different types of things that we could do. We would send them a packet of information if they didn't get it online. Then we would track all that information, make sure that we knew how many went out, knew how many came in. Then once we received it, we would review it. If there were any outstanding things, there were certain things that we looked for. If they said that they drank or smoked, we wouldn't hire them right off the bat. If there was a particular denominational difference that we didn't hire. They said they were a Wiccan, we didn't hire them. If they were, I had one gentleman who called me, he was Jewish, and wanted to know if he could come teach. He was expertise, he had a PhD in accounting or something like that, and we needed accountants. I said, well, tell me, we are a Christian institution. How would you espouse the Christian perspective and lead people to Jesus in the classroom? He said, oh, I guess that would be a little difficult. I said, I think it would. I wasn't trying to be mean. I was just trying to let him get to the realization this wasn't going to be a good match. Sometimes you're going to have that situation as you're reviewing. So we looked for a mission fit. Do they have all the pieces and parts that we're looking for to match? If they were a mission fit, we then scheduled them for initial interview with our faculty recruiter, and we collected their business card, we gave them ours, and then if they had anyone to refer, we gave them that information. If they didn't fit, we took them and said, hey, thank you for your interest, we won't be moving forward at this time. If they did well in the initial interview, we put them through what we call the CEM, the Candidate Evaluation Meeting. In that meeting, and this is of course for on-site faculty, but you could do a similar process for online. For the on-site faculty, we scheduled them for the Candidate Evaluation Meeting. They came on-site for an evening. We served a little bit of snacks, hors d'oeuvres type of thing, and they were to present a 10-minute teaching on anything. It could be on basket weaving if they were so inclined. We hoped that they did it on a topic that they would be teaching. And we collected certain pieces from them, the things that courses they wanted to teach. We had all the agenda for the evening. We gave them information about who we were as an institution, some of the requirements for their practice as a teacher for IW. And then we had 3 people sitting in there evaluating them. I was usually one, our faculty recruiter was one, and in our case, we had the librarian on our site as the third person. And often, that was a really good way to learn whether they were going to be good in front of the classroom, or if they knew their stuff. I had one guy come in there and teach stats for 10 minutes, and I'm not going to say I'm the best person in stats, but I had a lot of stats in my PhD. And there's some things that stand out to me that I know are not right. And this guy tried to tell me something that was clearly not right. And then I questioned him on it. And I said, I think you kind of have that backwards. And I explained. He said, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. It's what I said. Well, first of all, you didn't know what you were talking about. And then when you were given the chance to correct yourself, you insisted, you doubled down. So have fun. We're not going to move forward with you, but that gives you a chance to see their personality, see their teaching ability, and kind of see how their content knowledge is. And if they work out, great. We move them on to the next level, or we get a rejection. The next level of interview was a director's interview. That for us was an interview with me as the dean. If they were in another part, they had an actual director that was in the area, because ours had a regional dean. Some places only had a director, and they went through and we had the final check. Everything looked okay. We see everything. Let me hear you about your testimony. Let me hear about your faith background. Let me hear about your relationship with Jesus. Just kind of going through that. If they were a grad ed or a nursing candidate, we also moved them through an additional interview because they were more closely held. Because I have education background, I did the grad ed in Cleveland, but for the nursing, we really needed to ask them nursing questions. And while I have taught in nursing programs, it's not been with nursing content. It's been with stats and course design and that sort of thing. So we sent them with a nursing person to have that interview. If everything went okay, we then moved on to a faculty orientation. And our faculty orientation, I did 2 nights, 1 week apart, to try to mimic the class as much as possible. It started at 6 o'clock, it went to 10. The only thing that we probably did different was we served dinner that we don't normally serve to students. And they came in and went through the material. And I did almost all of those while I was there. And I did really mean things to them while they were in there. I did things like I talked to them about all the do's and the don'ts. One of the nights, I waited till about 8:45, quarter to 9 o'clock, and I gave them a set of narrative on a particular topic. And I said, okay, I want you to go through And I want you to summarize this in a couple paragraphs. And here's some paper. I want you to write me a summary of these 10 sheets of paper on this particular topic. And you go through and you give them a, I'm going to give you 15 minutes to do this. I understand that's not a lot of time. Go through and do it. And at about the 5-minute mark, I start going, okay, you got 5 minutes. And then 4-minute mark, you got 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes. At the 30-second mark, I start counting down by seconds. Really making it annoying, okay? And then we get done and I go, okay, pencils down. Let's talk about that activity. Tell me what you learned from that activity. And at first you'll get some students kind of going, okay, I learned, you're supposed to do this in this situation, and, it's really good to do that. And I really, for those students who are really trying, or those faculty members who are really trying to be on their best, say, I think I learned so much about this topic, and thank you for letting me do it. And finally, after all that's said and done, you finally get an honest person that says, it was really late at night, and I was really tired trying to get through this. And I said, that was the point of the assignment right there. You get the prize, because 9 o'clock at night is really late. So when your students are at 9 o'clock at night, if you have to do something, high intensity, high level learning, you can't expect them to jump right into it. They're tired. Wake them up. Figure out some way. If you have to do something like that late at night, have them stand up and stretch out, do something to wake them back up. And so those types of things are the process that we took them through for our recruiting. I don't see this in most places I go. I don't see a recruiting process. I don't see a training process that is intentional in the way it works. And without that intentionality, things kind of get wishy-washy on. And I've been through, I've interviewed and gone through the training process for a number of institutions that I didn't expect. And this is the part that was missing in most of those cases. Now, the other thing is messing with the formula. Now, for those of you that understand any of this, good for you, because I pulled this off the internet. I'm sure there are some formulas that I might recognize, but not too many of them. I do recognize sigma. I am a math person, so I should recognize some of that, but it's been long enough, and I didn't really, care to learn all that stuff again. I talked about this morning about making decisions based on data. Don't mess with the formula. You don't have data to back up what you're doing. Because if you mess with the formula, like Rob was talking about, some minor change can adjust your whole cost structure, your whole income structure. Make sure that you're making changes for good reason. I didn't get a chance to ask Rob, and I meant to at the end. Sylvia's husband, Matt, who helps with some of the data analysis, he's also worked on an algorithm to help them with their budget. So they can look at certain things to project their budget better too. And part of that is taking into consideration all the formulaic pieces that are parts of what it is that is the OCU adult program. But making sure that you don't mess with what's working is important. I think of a really good example is math class for adult programs. For some reason, math is just a subject that scares people to death. And as a math lover, it's hard for me to take because I love algebra. I love algebra all the time. I almost went and got my K-12 teaching just so I could teach algebra. I just enjoy teaching. I enjoy doing it, love it. So for me to hear that a student doesn't love it as much as me, I can't quite fathom. But when you add in college algebra, the level of fear goes up, and it causes students to not apply or to fail out because they get so afraid of it. So what most adult programs do is they have some sort of a business math or a stats class that is a little bit less intimidating to students to get through. And as I'm looking at some of the programs that we're in the process of developing for this dual degree, I would rather have a stats class put in there than some other class because, one, they're going to more often use, unless they're going into a STEM field, they're more often going to use stats in real life. How many times do you hear stats quoted about, whatever topic it is? They throw stats around like they're nothing and treat them like they're nothing in a lot of cases. And if you aren't educated as to what they mean, I mean, how many times have we heard there's a link between something and something else? And the intimation is its cause. It causes that, and it's not the case necessarily. So helping them understand stats would be a great thing. But if you put throw in an algebra course without considering the implications, you've messed up the formula. And they did this. They started to go down this path at Indiana Wesleyan one time, and they started to see almost immediately the implications of what happened. They lost students right away. Changing how you recruit students, changing how faculty interact, changing how any of the things that you do on a regular basis operate is going to mess with the formula and cause a nosedive. Or conversely, you might get lucky and it goes up, but I would rather you know why it went up. Because if you don't, you won't know how to make it continue to go up. Oh, and I went through and I put some of the things about the examples of messing with the formula. Adult and online should be a separate college. When you have them the same, they don't understand. They don't always talk about the same terms. I'm working with one of the groups to develop a particular concentration. We had a conversation, and they were meaning the same thing and saying entirely different things, and had the terms that they were using associated differently. And so it was because part of it was they were traditional versus adult and online, and making sure that the college or division has its own academic affairs. It's really important because the traditional is not going to understand why you're doing certain things, and they're going to clamp down on things that they shouldn't clamp down on. Giving them their own autonomy to go forward and do what they need to do, be nimble, push forward with the right program, so vital. One of the clients that I had this last year, I recommended we stop doing it until they get that fixed. Because they were paying me a fee monthly. And I said, guys, we're not getting anywhere right now. We need to stop working together for a while until that's worked out. And unfortunately, it was very much a God thing because they were kind of going, okay, we need to step back. And I said, it couldn't have happened better. But because they hadn't had that one fixed, the faculty had too much control, weren't letting us change courses that we needed to change. So, undedicated budget, we talked about that. Faculty that are separate from the traditional faculty. You can kind of see, I tried to put some of the corollary ones. If they're a separate college-owned academic affairs, they also shouldn't have, on the traditional side, taking all the money out from the adult program. The adult program should get to keep their own money within reason, of course, if you have some initiatives, et cetera. And they should not be looking at the adult and online program to stay afloat. Jim Barnes at Indiana Wesleyan had a policy that the only thing that the traditional side could use the money for was to build a building. Consequently, Indiana Wesleyan has a very nice campus, but they could not use the money for operations. They could not use the money to add a new academic program. It was only buildings. They could only use that excess revenue. The rest had to stay in the adult and online. So there's a number of the other ones here. I would point out more on the adult and online side. We can obviously talk about the traditional side, but have its own faculty, spending between $800 and $1,500 per student that you want to bring in the program. That's your marketing cost. That doesn't talk about personnel costs. So you're going to spend $800 to $1,500 per student, and when you're not good at, probably a little bit more than that. When you haven't figured out where you're going to put all the money, you're going to miss sometimes. You're going to put it into sources that don't work. So making sure that you're keeping that number. And I, again, make changes based on data, not on projection. This is a number that we have found is the number. OCU is on the $800 side. Basically, you add up all of your expenses you put in, you divide it by the number of students you got. That's how you get to that number, and we found that across lots of different programs, but that's the number.
Your ROI, return on investment, is going to be on an average.
I don't have an average for that. I have not calculated that as an ROI.
Class, and that's how much your credit hours.
Let me think. Off the top of my head, we do for the undergrad, I think, or for the associates, I want to say it is typically $195 or $295. I'll tell you what. Let's look at a pro forma. Yeah, and you're going to be at about $1,200, $12,000 if you have 10 students. But you're gonna spend $1,500 of that. Yeah. Yeah, you've got to have them stay in the program in order for it to work out. It does, but traditional programs are usually $2,500 to $3,000. Yeah, the adult side is a lot cheaper to recruit. Now, like I said, this doesn't count personnel. As I said this morning, earlier today, there's more personnel involved in the adult side, so that part is not in that number. There's more support structure for the adult side than there is for the traditional side. And as I said earlier, make changes based on data, not conjecture. This program, just like the traditional program, has to have direct access. You can't have an intermediary that is group thinking the process. They have to be given that access to the president to keep the program going. And changing this, adding an entrance exam for quality's sake. We want to have a high SAT. Well, an SAT in an adult program will kill your program. You don't need that. They haven't taken that test in 20 years or more. And it leads to a reduced enrollment. Changing from rolling enrollment to subterms. You know what a rolling enrollment is we start every so often, every couple months, or as OCU talked about, they start cohorts every month. That's rolling enrollment. To a subterms, where Liberty does subterms. They're so big, they've got a system that works for them. But for most people, changing from rolling enrollment to subterms reduced enrollment because there wasn't as many opportunity to enroll. That's what you do when you take out the rolling enrollment. Combining college of adult and online with traditional college, reduce innovation and reduce enrollment. Removing budget from adult and online to cover the cost of the traditional programs not doing their job and sustaining. They're not accountable for their money, and that bleeds off the resources that you could expand and gain more influence, more students, more ability to do what you're supposed to be doing. Allowing faculty to control the curriculum instead of the adult and online leaders, inability to change the 4 courses. Let's see, we got about 15 minutes before our time is up. One of the things that gets you out of some of these mistakes is having a culture of innovation. And I won't go into this in the level of detail as I did when I initially presented this, but I looked at innovation from the perspective of, first I did a field study of what people say about innovation, and I came up with classes of aspects of innovation. I also had it from the perspective of from the aspect of what does the Scripture say about innovation. Now, this is certainly not all that the Bible says about innovation. I've got several slides, and it's still not all of what the Bible says about innovation. But these are some of the verses that stood out to me about how God speaks to innovation. And so I put all those together, both the field literature and the applicable Scripture, and I came up, as far as the Scripture, I came up with these as kind of the general areas that those Scriptures fell into. Everything from God as the creator and provider of our abilities. God knows all of history. We should learn and prepare. God provides directions, plans, and resources. Do not be afraid. Have faith. Rest in God. Remain humble. The Holy Scripture is a resource to us. We belong to God and always be in prayer. Those were kind of the areas that the scriptures fell into. And again, you could find other ones. Other scriptures, you could categorize them differently, but these were some of the ones that stuck out to me. And while this looks somewhat like the Starship Enterprise, if you imagined it that way, as a Trekkie that I am, really I would prefer to flip this like this and make this as the foundation. The scripture is the foundation for the field literature and the innovation. So you go through innovation as a process. You look for the problem. You see there's a problem. You then get together and imagine what difference. I told you about getting around the table and imagining what could be as you're doing academic planning. That's what this is. You're imagining what could be for the problem. You're finding once you kind of go, this is what we want to do. We figured out what we want to. Then we're going to look for resources to fix the problem and manage the resource and get that. And then once we have this innovation, we're going to get it out there, whether it's to our culture, to the institution wide, to the field wide, whatever it is, however big that solution pertains, we're getting it out there. And in a culture of innovation, you have collaboration. We're about doing this together, because when you're innovating individually, you can come up with some great ideas, but they're limited. They have blind spots. When I come up with a great idea, I might think it's really awesome, and then I present it to my wife. And she has some other thoughts on it. Sometimes she's like, that is a really great idea. So I'm like, that's a great idea. And we're tenacious about it. We're not giving up on the idea because someone is a naysayer. We believe in the idea. When we go through this process, we're even more so because it's tested. Now, we'll go through this process again and again. And even that innovation may have better possibilities. It may be improved upon. It may be innovative. And the other aspect is speed. We can talk something to death. We're really good at that as academics. We can find ways to discuss that at a different angle, but if we don't get after it, if we don't get about the business, we're going to miss the opportunity. The innovation aspect is really a big deal as college administrators in a field that sometimes struggles with being slow. And sometimes we don't innovate for a couple different reasons. I told you about we think Jesus taught in a semester-based format, and he did it before chapel Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That idea, that mentality is almost as bad as this picture. If you've not seen this, this is entitled Buddy Jesus. That's just not exactly what I think of when I think of Jesus, but it's just kind of funny. So that aspect of not innovating is because we get in the mentality of we can't possibly. We don't do that. Jesus wouldn't do that. Whatever. We don't do it for whatever reason. And we think that our practices and the processes that we use are nearly as important as our faith conviction. And when we make that statement, we become religious in that belief. And that's a very dangerous spot to get into. Not that we lose our foundation, our belief structure, what we hold is true, but when we have practices that are not really our faith structure, they're not really what we believe the Bible says, that's when we get in a bad spot and we get stuck in the mud. And one of the things that Mark kind of talked about this earlier. When we try to solve the problem and we look to the S curve, we're looking at realizing efficiency. We're looking at new markets and new populations, and that leads to the larger body. If we can start being a culture of innovation, we start looking at ways that we can do things better, solving problems, we get past some of those things that we struggle with lack of leadership. When the leaders engage in the process of innovation, they see, I can't possibly stay either not in the know, passive towards the thing, passive-aggressive towards the thing, or just plain out of the loop because I'm focused on something else. Because if I do that, I've lost the opportunity. I've lost the ability to solve the problem. The problem for a lot of us is our institution is is running out of students losing money, or we're in debt up to our eyeballs. But we solve the problem by going through and looking at these new markets. We look for the innovation. Innovation doesn't have to just be the techie people with the nerdy glasses doing the work. It could be just implementing these new programs, these new markets, these new efficiencies, new technologies, all those sorts of things that could be, those could be our innovation. They don't have to be a brand new innovation, this could be a new innovation to us. One of the things that we've done in the past in this day is to create an online, an adult action plan. How are we going to implement this? I'm sharing with this wasn't necessarily what David asked me to present about this year, but we've done this in the past, and I thought it would be nice for you guys to have. These are kind of the steps as you're considering implementing adult and online, if you haven't already, or organizing it more effectively. Start with your mission. Look at your vision. Does it need to expand? Does it need to adjust? Consider the populations that are new to you. Work on thinking through what could be programs that would be a benefit to your organization. Develop that structure that you need to move forward. Okay. What questions do you have that I can answer? We've got 8 minutes. Thank you.
I think it really pushes up against who we are. Your point is, I get so tired of hearing all that focus on everything. Innovation is not the focus. Yeah. That's really kind of what you're saying. Yeah. I'm teaching a class right now in our PhD program on organization. Why people behave the way they do in organizations. This week in our forum discussion, touching on how we can utilize professional learning to leadership as transformational leaders and help grow the organization. That's great. But what I'm finding is, yeah, we really understand what I just said means. Yeah. But if we fall into old ways, like hierarchical, great style leadership versus everything's got to go up the chain of command and decision for weeks by 4 people versus collaborative leadership, then we can't get this done. Yeah. I think that's part of the reason why our schools are fighting against this a little bit, maybe not growing the samples that we've all been hearing about. Yeah. I wonder what your comments are on this.
Well, I kind of skipped over one of the slides where I talk a little bit about that, about the changing methods. I was having a discussion with a friend about some of the belief structures. I'm more of a modern worship guy. I play the drums, and so playing the drums and hymns, it can be done at some points. There's some hymns that work for that, but it's not always a fun proposition for me to play hymns. And so we were talking about some of the things that we do in church and how some people react towards them. I mean, I think for some people I would be considered a liberal theologically, not theologically. I mean, not that I'm out there on my beliefs. I'm pretty conservative on this, but they think some of the things I do are liberal. Would think playing drums probably I'm probably pushing Hell's Gates or something. But my response to them when they were talking about it, I said, well, if they are trying to be like Jesus by doing certain things that they're doing, why aren't they speaking Aramaic? Why do they read the Bible in English? Why do they do a number of things that we have adjusted to? Why do they wear slacks instead of some sort of a gown or something? That would have been indicative of that time period that Jesus lived in. We do it because we've updated our thinking on things. It's battle for change. And we think by changing the method, we're changing the message, and it's not that case. Jesus didn't ever change his message, but he did change his method. I mean, he healed one guy by spitting in the mud and rubbing the mud in his eyes. He taught from the hillside. He taught in the boat. He taught in the temple. He taught outside the temple. He did so many different things. He taught a woman who was really taboo to talk to at the well. when no one else would have anything to do with it. He associated with tax collectors. He did things that people didn't do, but his message was still the same. And I think we lose that fact when we're talking about our traditions. And if we can get to the fact of our core message, our core beliefs are not going to change. We are not giving them up, but our methods are going to change because life changes. I mean, our technology level has gone up. I mean, how many of us had a phone, our own phone as a kid? Even our own on the wall one. I mean, there were a few kids in my neighborhood that had a phone of their own. But my 12-year-old has his phone. I didn't have my own phone until I was an adult in my PhD program. Technology changes, and if we aren't willing to change, people will go, well, they get further and further from what's current because we're unwilling to make that change. And it's not because we won't change because we have lost who we are or lost what our relationship to Jesus is. This slippery slope in this case, when we're holding tight to who we are and what we believe, doesn't change because we've changed that. So I think that the concept that you were talking about, the distributed teams, it would be great, but I think part of what you're saying about we just do it exactly on. We do get worried about the groupthink aspect of it. Well, that's not how we do it. That's not what we're about. Why? Why aren't we about that? Because it would reach X number of more people because we reach them where we're not now. The church I attend, Life Church, if you're familiar with them, the pastor's Craig Rochelle. They implemented online church. They're now, Life Church is the biggest church in the U.S. I don't know that it's the biggest in the world because of like Paul Young Cho and others like that. But they're a huge church. Their online church reaches more people than their on-site church around the world. And one of the ways that they reach people is rather unique. They will place ads, in Google or whatever, to catch people. And so they click on it and find them. Well, they have a practice of doing anything short of sin to reach people for Jesus. One of the ways that they reach people for Jesus is to place ads on Google advertising adult websites. So you click thinking you're getting porn, and you end up in church. That's outside the box for most people. Most people could not imagine doing that. I don't know that many institutions, many universities would have that as a method, but for Life Church, it's a great way. We have people come all the time, and I serve on Fridays. In fact, this Friday I'm going to miss because I'm here. I serve on Fridays at 10 a.m. Central with the online team. We have people all the time showing up thinking, hey, this isn't exactly what I was looking for. and we immediately know where they're from, and they're like, what is this? And what are you guys doing here? And they're just kind of confused, and a lot of them stick around. In part, they're looking for something else. They're looking for, some way to connect with something real. What's more real than Jesus, and being able to connect him to for church. So our message, our belief is not changed by the method that we use. We just found another way to reach a different group that was not going to come to us if we didn't think creatively, find innovation. And Life Church is really good at that. They've got an exceptionally good team of innovators. So. Sure. So the question is, the institution owning and controlling the content. I didn't bring one. I can show you an electronic copy of one of our curriculum. It's usually 50-ish pages. It has the weekly devotions. It has the course objectives, the course description, institutional policy. It has all the assignments. It has all the discussion questions. Usually we hire a course writer. They're hired, they're paid I usually pay $1,200 to $1,500 per course to write. They actually write it with an instructional designer. They could be the faculty that eventually teach it, but you don't do it every time. You do it once, and then all the faculty members that teach that class use it. So you then, one faculty member or one course writer is going to develop it. Then maybe I usually like that person that wrote it to teach it first, so that they can see any bugs that they may have missed as they were developing it. So they teach it the first time, but then after that, anyone can teach it that has that background. They make something that they, in the agreement that we have, that becomes the property of the institution because they bought that. Now, a faculty member can retain rights to that, but the institution does not have to continue paying them for those rights. If it was a book or something like that, where they wrote a book outside the structure of the course writing process, and the institution used that book, obviously that's a little bit different, but if they just created a resource, the faculty member may retain the rights to use that elsewhere, but the institution doesn't keep paying for that. We have that written in the contract. It's called, there's a specific term that we use, embedded materials. So an embedded material they've created, we get the rights to it if it's something that they've created. If they don't own the rights to it, like if they want to use someone else's resource, they have to help us get copyright to that. So we don't continue to pay for it. We're not trying to build something that someone else is going to get rich off of. If they create the video lecture for the course and it's part of it, if that's what you're contracting them to do, that's still work for hire product. And they would get to include that. And like I said, it's part of the contract that I write about. I write in the contract that if they created it and are letting us use this, they let us use it forever with no extra charge. The faculty member may have the right to keep using that. Like let's say that they did this class elsewhere and they wanted to keep those, they have the rights to use those. But it's not the whole course in total. We own the whole course. That's pretty well-known case law for that.
Following up a little bit with the faculty issue, in writing an online program separately, it almost feels like that governs balance within how the faculty online system. The faculty who can some ways taken off of it. They don't control the curriculum anymore. Where is their role in helping shape?
In the academic affairs committee, yeah, that's part of why you have the academic affairs board outside. They are the academic affairs and the program administrators are the academics. They are the faculty who are in control. The thing that an adult program is systematized. So we're building a system that keeps working. You know, we're juggling, we're throwing up one ball, and then we add in the other balls, and they're all interspersed, but they're part of the system. And the advantage of the system is you realize those efficiencies to make it cheaper to reach students. You make more doing adult and online than a traditional, in large part because of those systems that are in place. So, and I confess I'm not a real strong faculty control guy. I'll be very honest, and that's with me having taught those 9,000 students. I always felt I was subject to program leaders, even in ones that felt like they were supposed to be the faculty control. I tend to go, we are beholden to our leader. We are serving the leader, and so. Other questions?
What's an average range to pay for a adjunct and then there's 2 levels of adjunct?
In our pro forma, we have set up as a formula as a master's degree individual, you have a base of $400 for 5-week period, plus $10 per student per week. I think that's right. At the once you have a doctorate, you have a base of $510 per student per week. So for 10 students, it's $900 or $1,000. That's getting to be a little bit on the low side now because we set that up 6 years ago now, I guess. So some of them have gone up from that. It's also a 5-week. Yeah, it's a 5-week class. Most faculty that I know are static. Yeah, anything. They do it for the 500, you know. It is a lot of work though. So you kind of have to balance that out. You know, they, like I said, most of them are very happy to get anything. It's an additional income that they weren't counting on, and it is the prestige, the ability to give back, the ability to influence another group. The different affiliate faculty member versus regular adjunct. The affiliate is basically a glorified adjunct. In my experience, the affiliate, we never treated them like a full-time faculty. They didn't get benefits. They didn't qualify for that. And so they were just a stable faculty. We used them more often than not. And accreditors, what they're looking for is a stable faculty. They're not as concerned about them being full-time as they are about you have a regular set of people teaching this group of students. And so that usually was a satisfying piece for them. But for Indiana Wesleyan, when we set that process up for them, basically all we did was we raised that affiliate faculty member to the highest level they could be paid for their degree level. And with Indiana Wesleyan, they did it by based on the number of nights you taught. So at a certain number, there was 3 stages. There was, you know, when they first started, it was like 1 through 10 nights of teaching was X rate, 11 through 30 was X rate, and then from 31 on up, you got that rate when you reached the highest level. And there was a similar but higher one for doctorally prepared. And so as an affiliate, if you weren't already up to the top level, which sometimes you weren't, improving yourself, they moved you up to the top level in your degree level. So it was only a couple, a couple $100 difference per class, but it was, appreciation. Yes. And plus, you typically had a guaranteed 12 courses. That was the other side of it. I got that contract if you'd like to see it. So, what other questions? Subject matter experts get, depending on the area, I like to start at 1,200 for a 5-week, 3-hour credit class. However, in some of the more competitive areas, if it's a real business, or if I'm struggling to find someone, I'll go out to 1,800 the most. That's for that 5-week model. When I was at Capella and wrote courses for them, we wrote a 10-week class, and I made usually $3,000 per class. Now theirs was a little bit longer. It had we had to work not only with an instructional designer, but with the graphics team to develop things. And those aren't always something that we do in our model. We'll develop a concept map, but we don't develop the high-end graphics. How do you deal with big programs that have? I really caution institutions from implementing them because some states require you to be fully accepted in, like, registered in their state to once you have an internship or a practicum. Do you get around that by changing that out with kind of? Yeah, usually we use a capstone in our programs, and there's ways that you can get around that, but usually it's a substitution of a course to do something slightly different. But anytime there's a supervision role, it usually attaches and causes them a lot of administrative substantive changes and recognitions from the state and all that stuff. you know, we're going that direction anyways, and that might not be a problem in the future, but right now, until NC Sarah gets across all the states, we kind of don't get to, I think eventually it will, or organizations like them. They're certainly the biggest of what I think the last I heard was 29 states have joined. Maybe, like I said, last I heard.
Even Pennsylvania is looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it'll eventually get there. There might be a few holdouts, but you know, there's got to be some. It's got to stop being about just the states finding more revenue. You know, so.
On the roundtable tomorrow, how does that relate to what we had today?
The roundtable tomorrow, I will have a set of questions to go over. They're not. If no one has questions, but it's really just open. If you have questions, I'll be there talking. So, and we can discuss whatever topics you'd like.
Can I add something that's kind of related, but I don't know how, unless you're like me, that you end up a day-long look at distance education, thinking, how do we redefine our on-campus experience to make it, you know, more meaningful and to attract more people? Because the growth in online is, you know, for specific reasons, but surely we could redefine our on-campus experience too.
I think you could. Again, there has to be that willingness and institutional fortitude to go through the process of change. If you don't have stakeholders at the table who are willing to do it, you can bang your head against the wall all day long, and nothing changes. And that's another reason that I insist on that separate college structure. Because if they're not going to change, there's no reason that they should drag you down. So, yes, I absolutely agree. And realistically, I think in a perfect world, there would be one. There would be one set of structures. But human nature being what it is, fallen, we have people getting in the way of us being able to innovate. And not that the adult and online groups, I'm not associating them with perfection. Please don't take that message. But more often than not, they recognize that need to be nimble, that need to adjust and change to meet the demands better than the ones that are growing. Recognize that. And the traditional side doesn't always seem to be. Should the traditional program change? I almost, if I was, as I said earlier, if I was going to start a college, I might start at the graduate level. But if I was going to start a college, I would for sure just do the intensive classes, the one-time classes. I can't see myself going back to the 16-week-long classes anymore. Yeah.
Even for your 20-year-old.
She loved. Her case was 8 weeks.
Yeah, and I can see both. I just wonder, so I guess that's my next. As I make the list of all the people I need to have with one.
Yeah.
You've done a good job.
The thing that's really nice about the short-term classes, if they love it, they can get more classes in it with different topic areas that are related. If they hate it, it's only 5 weeks long. Most people can make it through most classes for 5 weeks.
Right.
Any questions or comments? Well, guys, thanks for coming today. As Gary mentioned, there is a roundtable discussion tomorrow. I'll be leading that. If you have additional questions, thoughts, discussion areas, feel free to drop by. It's from 8:30 to 11:30. I forget which room it's in. Somewhere in this building. But I'm sure that you point in the right direction. So, thanks for coming today.
Thank you.